In the first scene, we meet a crazy woman named Sabine Spielrein. She gets angry and upset quickly, even over small things. In 1904, she is taken to Bergholzli, a well-known mental hospital in Zurich, Switzerland. Sabine is later found to have a normal case of hysteria, which will be treated by a Swiss doctor named Carl Jung. During their first meeting, Dr. Carl stands behind Sabine and notes that she has trouble answering questions, which she shows by stuttering a lot. The next morning, Carl and Sabine go for a walk in the woods, where Carl learns that Sabine has an amazing ability. She can predict what people will say before they say it. When asked about it, Sabine says she has an inner angel who talks to her in German and helps her figure out what will happen. When Dr. Carl heard this, he told her that her ability would help her get into medicine, which is what she wants to do. As they keep talking, Sabine drops her coat on the ground, so Dr. Carl picks it up with his walking stick and dusts it off. Surprisingly, this makes Sabine upset, and she tells him in a rude way to stop. A few days later, Carl finds out that Sabine is a smart lady with a medical degree. When he saw how smart and active she was, he gave her the chance to help him with his studies. Sabine can't believe she'll be working with such a famous scientist, but she doesn't hesitate to say yes. The scene then moves to Emma, Carl's wife, who has just had a beautiful baby girl. Carl goes to the birth room to see his baby because he is excited about the same thing. He sees, though, that his wife is sad because, as she had promised, she had hoped to have a boy. Carl tries to make Emma feel better by telling her not to think such crazy things. In the middle of all this, Carl and Sabine keep talking, and he tells her what's really going on with her health. He says that Sabine's problems began when her cruel father put her down in front of everyone. He would hit her on the behind and make her kiss his hands as punishment. This actually made Sabine want to humiliate herself, so she started looking for ways to do so. Even Carl hitting her coat with his walking stick earlier was enough to make her feel excited. With this important piece of information, Dr. Carl sets up a meeting with Dr. Sigmund Freud, a famous Austrian doctor, to talk about their patients and figure out the best way to help them get better. As the doctors talk, they start to share their thoughts and study each other. This leads to a long chat that goes on for 13 hours straight. Even so, the boys aren't tired, and they decide to meet up as soon as possible. Later, Carl runs into Sabine and tells her what Dr. Freud said to him. As their talk goes on, they find out they have a lot in common and become much closer to each other. One day, Dr. Freud has to go on a business trip right away, so he writes a letter to Carl asking him to take care of a patient named Dr. Otto Gross, who is an unbalanced psychologist and is known for his genius and tendency to sleep with many women. In the letter, Dr. Freud tells us everything we need to know about Otto, including the strange fact that when he gets angry, he bites. For their friendship's sake, Carl agrees without a doubt. He then goes to a session with Otto in hopes that his way of helping people through talking will help the patient. Otto shows how lustful he is by bragging about how many women he has and how many children he has had with them. He also tells Carl to have affairs outside of his marriage. Otto says that having more than one partner makes a person healthy and fit, while having only one gives them a headache. The next day, Sabine works hard to help Carl with his study and even makes him laugh with a few jokes. She has already started getting better from her mental illness. On the other hand, Carl's thoughts keep going back to what Otto said. He can't help but stare at Sabine for a while, but he manages to keep himself in check. In the evening, Carl meets with Otto again for therapy. The second person asks him if he has ever gotten close to one of his patients. Carl tells him no and then asks Otto the same question. In reaction, Otto says that he tricks his patients into thinking that they are sick if they don't want to sleep with him. He uses this method on every woman he meets, and it almost always works. Otto says that he has slept with more than 100 women, which is true. The next morning, Carl and Sabine meet in a park and start talking about relationships. Sabine says that she has never been sexually active, which suggests that this may be one reason why she feels sad and anxious. So, she would like to do something like this right away. When the doctor hesitates, Sabine takes the lead and suddenly kisses him. She then invites Carl to her house later that day so they can have a heated affair. Later, during the therapy session, Otto tries to convince Carl to give in and do sexual things to Sabine. He should give it to her since she wants it. Carl is still set on his choice, though. He doesn't want to hurt his wife, and he knows that getting involved with a patient is against the rules. But as Otto keeps telling Karl about his love experiences, Karl's determination starts to weaken. When the crazy Otto claps a worker in the open field, he gives in to what he wants. Karl can't take it longer, so he runs to Sabina's house and ends up making out with her. This is the start of their affair, and as it goes on, they do more and more intense things together, like bondage and beating. One day, Emma gives Karl a boat with red sails as a gift. She knows it's something he's always wanted. She says that he is the best person in the world and deserves everything he wants. Karl knows he is hurting his wife when he sees how much she loves and trusts him. So, he goes to Sabina's house and tells her that they need to end their relationship right away. But she talks him into staying with her by telling him to beat her like her father used to. In the next scene, Dr. Freud comes back from his work trip and talks with Karl about their different ideas about psychoanalysis. But they often disagree with each other, which puts a strain on their friendship. As the conversation starts to get heated, Freud brings up a story that Karl has taken one of his patients as a lover and is having a child with her. But the second one strongly denies the charge. He says that he is just keeping a close eye on the woman. After the meeting is over, Karl sees that he can't keep his affair a secret any longer. He chooses to end his secret relationship with Sabine, which breaks her heart and makes her sad. A few days later, Sabine is furious and storms into Karl's office, accusing him of telling her mother about their affair. She says he lied to her and is an idiot. In answer, Karl says that her mother already knew about the connection because she got a letter from an unknown person. He tells Sabine that from now on, he will only treat her as his patient and not care about their past relationship. This makes Sabine even more angry, so she grabs a knife and cuts Karl's face before running away. Later, she sends a letter to Dr. Freud asking for a meeting to talk about her affair with Karl. After reading her message, Freud writes to Karl to find out what's really going on, but Karl denies having anything to do with it. He says that Sabine is trying to ruin his life by making up lies about him and sharing them. Freud believes it right away because they are close friends, so he writes a message to Sabine. In it, he says that he can't meet her right now because he has to work. Freud also says that they figure out their problems on their own. Sabine goes to Karl's office again because she is overwhelmed by the situation. When she gets there, she finds out that Karl is leaving the hospital. He is going to the US to take part in a big meeting, it turns out. Sabine is angry with Karl because he lied to Freud about their affair. She tells him he has to tell Freud the truth about their friendship in a letter. Sabine also tells Karl that she could have hurt his image in public, but she didn't. When Karl hears all of this, he gives in and sends a letter to his Austrian friend, telling him the whole truth. Freud feels misled but not shocked when he reads the letter. He just sends Sabine a letter in which he apologizes and tells her how much he admires the way she solved the problem. The scene then jumps ahead a few years, to when Sabine goes to Karl's house in Switzerland to work on her dissertation with him. As they work together, they are reminded of their past sexual encounters, which took place in places like Karl's bedroom, the mental ward, and even the boat. So, they decide to have a child to add another story to the list. After that, Sabine talks about why she decided to leave Zurich after she graduated and moved to Vienna. This makes Karl sad, so he asks Sabine not to leave, but she doesn't change her mind. 2 more years go by, and Sabine, who is now a licensed therapist, goes to Vienna to meet Freud. During their talk about psychoanalysis, Sabine says that she is on Freud's side, but she also stresses how important it is for psychoanalysis to keep growing and that Freud and Karl get along. But Freud doesn't seem interested in making things right with Karl. They are so far apart now that they don't want to look at each other's faces. After a year, Sabine goes to Emma's house to see her. Sabine is now married to a Russian doctor, and she is expecting a child. The couple wants a girl, and that is what they are hoping for. As they talk, Emma says that Karl's mental health has been getting worse since he stopped working with Freud. She asks Sabine to talk to him because of this. On the other hand, Karl is seen sitting quietly by a river. It turns out that he has moved away from his study work and is no longer making progress. Soon after that, Sabine walks up to him and starts talking. Karl says that he has been having nightmares about the end of the world that keep him from sleeping. Sometimes, he sees that a huge flood is destroying the whole city. This flood is so big that it could destroy the whole world. Sabina finds the talk boring, so she changes the subject quickly and tells him that she and her husband are going back to Russia. She then asks about his new girlfriend, and Carl tells her that her name is Tony and that she looks like Sabina. He says that Tony makes him think of all the fun times he had with Sabina. Carl also says that his love for Sabina has helped him grow as a person, but he knows he can't do anything to change the situation. After they talked, Sabina got on a carriage and left the city, while Carl was still thinking. At the end of the movie, the fates of the 4 experts are revealed. Otto died sadly of starvation in Berlin in 1920, and Freud died of cancer in London in 1939, after being forced to leave Vienna by the Nazis. Sabina had taught many analysts in the Soviet Union. In 1942, she and her 2 daughters were killed by the Nazis, which was a terrible end. Carl, on the other hand, got over his mental breakdown and became known as the best counselor in the world before he died in 1961. Share your thoughts in the comments, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.